So we are hearing from Jodi Arias this morning following her conviction for the murder of her former boyfriend. That trial attracting attention worldwide, and now the penalty phase begins. NBC's Diana Alviera is covering the story in Phoenix. Diana, good morning to you.
Savannah, good morning. Just before the verdict was read out loud, Jodi Arias turned to her family and smiled. Well, that all changed after she heard the jury's decision, when she says she did not deserve.
I believe death is the ultimate freedom, so I'd rather just have my freedom as soon as I can get it.
Jodi Arias, just after hearing the guilty verdict against her, tells local station KSAZ that she'd prefer a death sentence to life in prison.
As to count 1, first-degree murder, guilty.
It took just over 15 hours for the jury to find Arias guilty of killing her former boyfriend, Travis Alexander, stabbing him 27 times, slitting his throat, and shooting him in the head. Crowds gathered outside the courtroom reacted with wild cheers and applause. While Arias called the verdict unexpected, saying she did not agree the killing was premeditated, the jury's decision brought visible relief to the family of Travis Alexander, who've endured 4 months of evidence and testimony, much of it often graphic. His brothers and sisters hugging and crying in the courtroom.
Justice for Travis!
Alexander's best friend, Dave Hall, screaming with joy as he left the courthouse.
Relief. After 3 days of waiting, not knowing if there was maybe a holdout or a hung jury or something like that, it feels just so good to hear those charges.
The now convicted killer said she hopes the verdict brings Alexander's family some sense of peace. But for Arias' family, seen just after visiting her in jail, they fear she'll face the ultimate punishment. And now the trial moves into the penalty phase. The state must attempt to prove to the jury that Jodi Arias' crime deserves a death sentence. Savannah.
Diana Alviar in Phoenix, thank you. Star Jones is a former prosecutor and veteran legal commentator. Lisa Bloom is today's legal analyst. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Star, let me start with you and what Jodi Arias says, that she prefers the death penalty. Do you buy it, or do you think, as some commentators do, that she's just trying to play some games with the jury in case they're watching some kind of reverse psychology thing?
Well, if that's what her attempt is, it's not a very good one. I think actually she will probably end up with a appealable issue of ineffective assistance of counsel, because who would let their client...
Well, you're assuming the lawyers let them, and she didn't just do it.
Because I can't even imagine why a defendant in the middle of the case is far from over, would give an interview saying anything that can be used against her.
Lisa, let's just say we take her at her word and that she does want the death penalty. Could she instruct her attorneys not to offer evidence in this penalty phase, basically not make a plea for leniency?
Well, she could, but I don't think that's going to happen. As far as I know, everyone's going forward with the death penalty phase, and the prosecution still has to prove up several steps before we get to the death penalty. They have to show that this crime was heinous, that it was cruel, or that it was especially brutal. That's the first step. If the jury finds that, they go to the next step and weigh aggravating factors against mitigating factors, and that's where we're going to hear about her childhood. We're going to hear about any lack of criminal record, her age, and any mental disorders that she has. All of that has to be proved up before a jury can sentence her to death.
Yeah, and in this penalty phase of the trials, when we really start to hear the life story of the defendant and the attempt is made to humanize her, I wonder, Star, what you make of this quick verdict. And given that there was a 4-month trial, 4 days of deliberations, this was a quick verdict. In your mind, since all the jurors agreed that this was a premeditated, planned murder, do you think that makes them somewhat more inclined to the death penalty?
Absolutely. They are not believing Jodi Arias. I think that was very clear from their verdict. And what's going to happen is they have to look for mitigation from a defense perspective. The mitigation has to be some genuine sign of remorse. She's not shown that throughout the trial, and she certainly hasn't shown it afterwards.
And let me put that to you, Lisa, because Jodi Arias has the opportunity to testify again in this phase of the trial. And what do you do when she said that she did the killing, but she tried to argue in the first phase that it was justified? I mean, how does she get up there? Do you think she sticks to the battered woman theory? Does she offer remorse?
she has to stick to the same theory that she offered at trial so that she can preserve her rights on appeal. So how can she express remorse when her theory all along has been self-defense, and as a death penalty defendant, she has automatic rights of appeal? So I would expect her to say she's very sorry that Travis Alexander is gone. She's sorry for her role in it, but she simply cannot come out and look the jury in the eye and say, I'm sorry that I murdered him.
Well, actually, she can, because Jodi Arias has changed her story so many times throughout this case. We're not sure what she'll say.
Well, one thing that did come out is she is definitely a liar and had to admit that many times on the stand. Star Jones and Lisa Bloom, thank you very much. We should mention there will be much more on the Jodi Arias case tomorrow night on Dateline at 9, 8 Central Time. Matt?
All right, Savannah, thanks.